The room was small, quiet, and dimly lit by a single window. Morning light slipped through the thin curtains, falling gently on the old wooden floor. The air felt still, like time moved slower here. She sat on the edge of her bed, carefully stitching a loose thread on her dress. Her fingers moved slowly, neatly, as if she had learned to fix things on her own a long time ago. No one had ever fixed anything for her. "Are you ready?" A soft voice came from the doorway. She looked up and gave a small smile. Almost. Her guardian stood there, watching her with tired but kind eyes. "You don't have to rush. It's just another day." Just another day. She nodded, but deep down she knew every day felt the same. Simple. Quiet. Invisible. Speech Balloon, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. "I ironed your dress last night," her guardian added gently. "It's not new, but it still looks beautiful." She looked down at the dress in her hands. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't perfect, but it was all she had. "Thank you," she said softly. There was a pause. Then, almost hesitantly, she asked, "Do you think my parents would have been proud of me?" The question hung in the air. Her guardian's expression softened, but there was sadness behind it. "Of course they would be. But we don't even know who they were," she whispered. Silence. That silence said everything. She had grown up with questions that had no answers. No family name. No history. No one to call her own. Just a quiet life, built on survival. "I used to imagine them," she said, her voice distant. "That maybe they were important. That maybe they were looking for me." Her guardian stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to be important to matter." She forced a small smile, but her eyes didn't agree. Because deep inside, she always felt like something was missing. Like she was a story with the first chapter torn out. She stood up slowly, holding her dress close to her chest. "I'll be fine," she said, more to herself than anyone else. But as she turned toward the mirror, she paused. For a brief moment, her reflection didn't feel like her own. It felt like a stranger, someone whose truth was still hidden. It happened on an ordinary evening that changed everything. The city was glowing with soft golden lights, and the air carried a gentle breeze that felt almost comforting. She stood outside a small bookstore, holding a worn-out book she had just bought, when someone accidentally bumped into her. The book slipped from her hands. "Oh, sorry," a voice said quickly. She bent down at the same time as him, and their hands touched while reaching for the book. For a second, everything paused. She looked up and saw him. He had kind eyes. Not perfect, not polished, but warm in a way that felt real. He handed her the book with a small smile. "I think this belongs to you," he said softly. She hesitated before taking it. "It does." But neither of them moved away immediately. That was the moment something small began. Days turned into meetings. Meetings turned into conversations. Conversations turned into something neither of them expected. One afternoon, they sat on a quiet bench near the river. The sunset reflected on the water like melted gold. "You're always alone," he said gently. She looked away. "I'm used to it." He didn't question her past. He didn't judge her silence. Instead, he simply said, "Then you don't have to be alone anymore." Her heart skipped. No one had ever said that to her before. "Why would you care?" she asked quietly. He turned toward her fully. "Because you matter." The words hit her deeper than she expected. From that day, he stayed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. He would bring her small things she liked. Warm tea on cold evenings, books with folded pages, quiet walks when life felt heavy. Slowly, she began to believe something she had never dared to believe before. That she was allowed to be loved. One night, under a sky full of stars, he stopped walking. "I don't want a perfect life," he said. She looked at him, confused. "I just want a life where you're there," he added softly. "No matter what happens. I will stand by you." Her breath caught. "Even if I have nothing?" she asked. He smiled. "Especially then." Tears filled her eyes, but for the first time, they weren't from pain. They were from hope. She believed him. completely. And without knowing it, she placed her entire heart in his hands. A decision that would one day change everything. The dining room felt too perfect, too quiet, too controlled. Every piece of silverware was placed with precision. The soft ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. She sat at the table, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying not to feel out of place. But she did. Across from her, the groom's mother observed her like she was a problem that needed solving. Finally, the silence broke. "So," the mother-in-law said slowly, stirring her tea without looking up, "this is the girl you chose." The groom shifted in his chair. "Mom, please." "No," she cut him off sharply. "I want to understand." Her eyes finally lifted to the bride. They were cold. "You don't come from anything," she said plainly. "No family name, no background, nothing we can respect." The words landed hard. The bride lowered her gaze, her fingers tightening slightly, but she said nothing. The groom leaned forward. "She's a good person. That's what matters." His mother gave a short, humorless laugh. "Good doesn't build reputation. Good doesn't build legacy." The room felt smaller. He reached for the bride's hand under the table. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. That hurt him more than he expected. Days passed like this. Small comments, sharp glances, silent judgments wrapped in polite words. At a family gathering, the mother-in-law introduced her with a forced smile. "She's with my son," she said, as if even saying fiancé was too generous. A guest whispered, "She looks so ordinary." The bride heard it. She always heard everything, but she never responded. Not once. That silence became her shield and her prison. One evening, as she stood alone near the balcony, the groom approached her. "I'm sorry about my mother," he said softly. She looked at the city lights ahead. "She just doesn't like me." "It will get better," he promised. "Just give it time." She nodded faintly, but something inside her tightened, because deep down, she could feel it. Time wasn't softening anything. It was building something heavier, something waiting to break. And far behind them, inside the house, his mother was already planning the moment she would finally end it all. The wedding hall was filled with soft music, golden lights, and smiling guests, but the air felt heavy, like something was about to break. The bride stood at the center, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to stay calm. The groom stood beside her, but even his presence felt distant today, because his mother was walking toward them. Slow, controlled, certain. She stopped in front of the bride and looked at her as if she was something unworthy of even standing there. Then she spoke. "I have stayed silent long enough." The music faded. Guests slowly turned their attention toward the center of the hall. The bride felt her heartbeat rise. The mother-in-law raised her voice. This wedding should never have happened. A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. The groom stepped forward. "Mom, stop. This is not the time." But she didn't even look at him. Instead, her eyes stayed locked on the bride. "She is not worthy of this family," she said coldly. "Not today. Not ever." The words echoed through the hall like a slap. The bride's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move. She didn't speak. But her eyes shimmered with pain she refused to let fall. A guest whispered, "Is she serious?" Another murmured, "This is so embarrassing." The mother-in-law continued, louder now, feeding on the attention. "She has no background, no identity, nothing that belongs here." She turned slightly toward the guests. "Tell me, how can someone like that become part of our name?" Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. The groom finally raised his voice. "Enough." But his mother raised her hand, stopping him instantly. "This is my son's wedding," she declared, "and I will not allow it to be ruined by someone who has nothing to offer this family." The bride stood still, her face pale. Each word stripped something away from her dignity. Slowly, she turned her head toward the groom, waiting, hoping, but he didn't step forward. Not yet. And in that painful silence, she realized something was changing in him too. Something she could not see clearly but would soon destroy everything she believed in. The ground outside the wedding hall trembled slightly as the sound of engines grew louder. At first, no one noticed. But then, one by one, sleek black luxury cars stopped in front of the venue. The guards at the entrance froze. The guests inside began to whisper, "What is happening outside?" Before anyone could answer, the grand doors of the hall slowly opened. A strong wind swept in, and then he walked in, a powerful man in a dark suit. His presence alone changed the air in the room. It was no longer a wedding. It felt like a courtroom waiting for judgment. Every step he took echoed through the silence. The bride looked up, and her heart stopped for a reason she didn't understand, because something about him felt familiar. The groom frowned. "Who are you?" The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, his eyes scanned the room until they landed on her, the bride. His expression changed. Not anger, not confusion, relief. "Stop the ceremony," he said firmly. The entire hall went still again. The mother-in-law scoffed. "Excuse me? Do you even know where you are?" The man ignored her completely and walked forward, step by step, until he stood directly in front of the bride. Her breath trembled. "Who are you?" she asked softly. His voice broke slightly when he answered. "I've been searching for you, my daughter." A wave of shock swept through the room. The groom took a step back. "Daughter?" The man turned to the crowd, and then spoke again, louder this time. "She is not a nobody." Silence. "She is my only child." Gasps filled the hall. The bride froze. Her mind couldn't process the words. Only child. Father. None of it made sense. The man's eyes softened as he looked at her. "You were taken from me when you were just a child," he said. "I never stopped looking for you." The mother-in-law's face turned pale. The guests whispered in disbelief. The groom stared at her, completely shaken. And the bride. She stood still. Her entire life, everything she believed about herself, was cracking apart in real time. But then the man added something even more shocking. Something that made the entire room fall into dead silence again. The hall was frozen in silence, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. Every eye was locked on the man standing beside the bride. He took a slow breath and then spoke again. "My daughter is not just my child," he said firmly. "She is the only heir to the entire legacy I built." A murmur spread instantly through the crowd. The bride's fingers trembled. He stepped closer to her, his voice softening now. "You are the only daughter of a trillionaire." For a second, there was no sound. No music. No whispers. Just emptiness. Then, chaos. Gasps exploded across the hall. People turned to each other in shock, unable to believe what they had just heard. A trillionaire's daughter? No way, this can't be real. The groom staggered slightly, his face draining of color. "What did you say?" The mother-in-law's expression changed instantly. Confidence disappeared. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The bride stood completely still. Her mind felt like it was breaking apart. Trillionaire, daughter, father. It didn't fit into the story she had lived all her life. The man turned toward the groom and his family. "And you," he said coldly, stood here and humiliated her. The groom lowered his eyes, unable to speak. The mother-in-law tried to regain control. This must be some misunderstanding. But he cut her off sharply. "There is no misunderstanding." His voice carried power that silenced the entire room again. "She is my blood, my only child, and the world has been searching for her identity for years." The bride finally looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness, but of confusion. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why didn't I know?" His expression softened instantly. "Because you were taken from me before you could even remember my face." A heavy silence fell again. The truth had landed like thunder. The groom stepped back completely now, realization hitting him hard. The mother-in-law looked around, desperate, as if hoping someone would deny it. But no one did, because the truth had already filled the room. And just when it felt like nothing more could be revealed, the man slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out something that made everyone in the hall take a step back in shock. The silence in the hall was unbearable now. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of truth finally crushing everyone inside it. The groom stood frozen, his face pale, his hands shaking slightly as the words kept repeating in his mind. Trillionaire's only daughter. He slowly turned toward the bride. For the first time, he didn't see the ordinary girl his mother always spoke about. He saw someone far beyond his understanding. Someone he had failed. "Wait," he whispered, stepping forward. I didn't know." His voice broke. The mother-in-law, who once stood tall with pride, now looked completely different. Her shoulders dropped. Her confident expression disappeared like it never existed. She took a shaky step forward. "No, this can't be," she muttered. "We were told she had nothing." Her eyes finally met the bride's. And in that moment, everything she had said came back like a storm. Every insult, every judgment, every humiliating word. Her lips trembled. I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly, her voice now soft, desperate. "I was just trying to protect my son." But her words no longer held power. They sounded empty. The groom stepped closer to the bride again. "Please," he said, his voice breaking completely now. "I was wrong. I should have stopped it. I should have stood by you." The bride didn't respond. She just looked at him. Not with anger, not with hate, but with silence that hurt even more. That silence made him flinch. The mother-in-law suddenly tried again, her voice shaking. "We can fix this, we can still make things right." But she stopped when she saw the bride's expression. There was nothing left to break, because everything had already broken. The groom lowered his head. For the first time, he looked truly small. "I lost you before I even understood your worth," he whispered. The bride finally took a slow step back. Not toward them. Away from them. The distance between love and regret had never felt so wide. And as she turned slightly, the man beside her, the one who called himself her father, placed a protective hand near her shoulder. But then his expression changed, because outside the hall, another set of engines was approaching. The hall still echoed with silence, but now it felt different. Heavier. Final. Irreversible. The bride stood at the center of it all, her veil long gone, her truth fully revealed, but her heart no longer belonged to the chaos around her. The groom took a careful step forward. "Please," he said softly, his voice broken. "Don't end this like this. We can fix it. I swear we can." But she didn't move. Her eyes stayed steady. Not angry, not emotional, just calm. And that calm scared him more than any tears ever could. "I trusted you," she said quietly. The groom froze. "I trusted your words. I trusted your promises. I trusted that you would stand by me." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. But every word carried weight. The mother-in-law opened her mouth, trying to speak again, but no sound came out this time. Because even she knew there was nothing left to defend. The bride turned slightly toward the groom. "You didn't protect me," she continued. "Not even once." He lowered his head. "I was afraid," he whispered. "I didn't know what to do." "That's the problem," she replied gently. "When it mattered most, you chose silence." A painful pause filled the air. The father stood quietly beside her, watching without interruption. He did not push. He did not decide for her. He simply waited, because he knew this moment belonged to her. The groom's eyes filled with tears now. "Please don't leave," he said again, almost desperately. "I love you." She looked at him one last time, and for a brief moment, something soft flickered in her eyes. But it faded quickly. "Love is not enough," she said. The words landed like a final door closing. Slowly, she removed the remaining part of her wedding jewelry and placed it on the table beside her. One by one, like ending a chapter she once believed in. "I choose dignity," she said firmly. The hall went completely silent again. Even the air felt still. The groom stepped forward one last time but stopped when she turned away. Not toward him, not toward the past, but toward the future waiting behind her father. And as she took her first step away from the wedding altar, the lights in the hall flickered slightly, as if even the world was unsure what would happen next. The wedding hall felt far behind her now, like a fading memory she was finally ready to leave in the past. Every step she took echoed differently. Not as a girl who had nothing, but as someone who had everything waiting for her. Outside, the night air was cooler, calmer, as if the world itself was breathing again. She stopped for a moment near the black luxury car waiting at the entrance. The door stood open, not like an escape, but like a return. Her father stood beside her, watching her quietly. He didn't rush her. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at her, like a man who had lost her once and was afraid to lose even a second of her again. "You don't have to go back there," he said gently. She looked down for a moment, her fingers slowly releasing the last trace of her bridal bracelet. "I'm not going back," she said softly. Her voice was steady. Not broken anymore. Not uncertain. Her father nodded slowly, as if he had been waiting his whole life to hear those words. For a moment, silence wrapped around them. Then he spoke again. "You don't have to be what the world made you believe," he said. "You are my daughter. You are strength. You are legacy." She finally looked up at him, and for the first time she didn't feel lost. She felt found. A faint breeze moved through her hair as she stepped forward, not hesitating, not looking back. She entered the car, her posture straight, her expression calm, but powerful in a way no one in that wedding hall had ever seen before. Her father followed and closed the door gently behind her. Inside the car, she stared out of the window as the lights of the hall slowly faded in the distance. The place where she was humiliated, where she was broken, where she was underestimated, it was getting smaller, not because it mattered less, but because she had finally outgrown it. Her father's voice broke the silence. "This is only the beginning," he said. She turned slightly toward him, and for the first time that night she smiled. Not the smile of a bride, but of a woman who had just reclaimed her life. The car engine started smoothly, and as the vehicle moved forward into the dark city road, the camera slowly began to fade out. But just before it ended, her phone lit up with an unknown message, and it said only one line. "Now that you know who you are you ready for the truth about your mother?" Her smile slowly faded. Her fingers tightened around the phone, and her eyes filled with a new kind of fear, because this story was not over yet. If you want to see what happens next and uncover the truth about her mother, make sure to comment below. What do you think will happen next?